Thank you guys for being here. It's been a long journey. It's depressing, but it's important. I wrote a couple things down because I didn't want to forget some of the more important aspects of things. So, again, my name is Justin. I've been following WikiLeaks and Julian Assange since sometime in about 2013, not long after he took asylum in the Ecuadorian Embassy in London in 2012. WikiLeaks caught my attention because it wasn't like other news outlets that told you what to think about world events. It simply gave you the documents and pointed out key aspects of that document. WikiLeaks always assumed that you were smart enough to come to your own conclusions. What I learned from WikiLeaks, in the Gitmo files, I learned that my government was kidnapping and torturing without charges. In the Iraq war logs, I learned my government contracts out things that they didn't want pinned to them, like a 60% civilian casualty rate of over 100,000 people killed. Then Daniel Hale came around and set us straight, and it was actually 90% civilian casualty rate, so we had a correction there. In Afghan, that was the 90%. Then collateral murder video shared the war crimes and killing of journalists and first responders, as well as a complete lack of humanity. The global intelligence files showed me that the CIA contracted with companies like Dow Chemicals to spy on and defeat activists, much like COINTELPRO did with social movements years before, and like the FBI did recently in Aurora, Colorado with Black Lives Matter. It's still ongoing. This is still a thing. As Julian Assange has said, it is impossible to correct abuses unless we know that they're going on. So all of this demonstrated to me the need for transparency, education, and accountability. Brave publishers like Julian Assange are the only reason that we know about these essential events. What we know now is that the UK spent £1 million a year on surveillance of that embassy. We know the CIA contracted with UC Global to record everything from meetings with lawyers to doctors to journalists visiting. We know that every cell phone and SIM card and laptop drive was taken and copied for the CIA. Even though this violated the rights of the US citizens who would be protected by the Fourth Amendment, all of this violates any chance for a fair trial in the United States. Physically impossible. There's no way. We know the CIA planned to assassinate him. And we knew that the UK violated international law to take Julian out of the embassy, and they stole his belongings and gave them to the United States. The United States, who wants 175 years, a death sentence for journalism. If he is sent to the US, it will violate the extradition treaty for political prisoners, and it will place him with those planning his murder. The court he'd be tried in does not allow for a public defense, because those are still classified items, so they can't be brought into court. It has a 99% conviction rate, so it's predetermined. If he goes there, it's already done. And the treaty would be broken for that entire aspect of things, for him to be extradited. And all for what? Because Julian Assange exposed crimes he did not commit crimes. Julian has said, I believe the way to justice is education, and I agree. He's also said to keep a person ignorant is to place them in a cage. The thing to keep in mind is that every one of us that uses any type of social media is a publisher. What you publish on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook is subject to oversights and actions. Actions like your bank accounts being frozen. Actions like the proposed hate speech bill in Ireland that can, doesn't define what hate is, but they can prosecute you for it. If you've ever published Ceasefire Now, or support UNRWA, or jail fill in the blank your political person that you don't like with your political opponent, then you could be the person that has their bank accounts frozen. You could be the person that your PayPal is shut down because you published something that they did not like, and something that is now potentially hate speech or genocide speech. If you say ceasefire now, they're pushing for that. They're pushing for that to be hate speech. So this is you on trial. So whatever your cause is, from political corruption to workers' rights, to women's rights, to our health care, to the opioid crisis, to clean water, air, and food, or our ailing planet, you and I have a right to know what is done with our taxes and in our names. The brave journalists that are being tortured and jailed and murdered, this is a war on journalists. It must end. Julian said reality is an aspect of property. It must be seized, and investigative journalism is the noble art of seizing reality back from the powerful. If you are not allowed to know something, you can never take actions to change it. Now we have a genocide on journalists in Gaza, and Julian's quote comes to mind. Every time we witness an injustice and do not act, we train our character to be passive in its presence, and thereby eventually lose all ability to defend ourselves and those that we love. We may not agree on politics, but we all agree a brave man who exposed criminal activity does not deserve 175 years in jail after 5 of them in Belmarsh and 7 arbitrarily detained in the embassy. I'm grateful to truth tellers, to journalists willing to put their lives on the line for us. So I will stand for them. Our First Amendment is the first for a reason. As Julian has said, what does censorship reveal? It reveals fear. We must free Julian Assange.